Hello again and welcome to the program. I am Suren. Here is a question I must consider as it is fresh in my mind. Why many people seem to complain about anything? Firstly, what does psychology behind complaining consider? Well, psychologically considered, complaining can be a stress relief mechanism. So it can be a positive thing. Complaining about one's workload, for instance, could be to release built up tension. Just think about it. Research points to the venting can be effective in reducing stress. However, excessive venting, as anything else, can lead to increased feelings of negativity, and one cannot say this enough. Okay, let's talk about psychology behind complaining, shall we? How can we describe complaining in psychological consideration, as it has been researched into and a number of articles written about, and so we tend to ask this question. Why do we do it? Consider. When it is explored, we discover the underlying psychology of complaining as it provides real life examples, right? And also important quotes and research, thus the data obtained is to help us understand and manage this typically very human tendency. Complaining is an expression of dissatisfaction. It is also a way of saying something that is not right. This trend often serves as a way to express annoyance or even a form of satisfaction. For instance, when your food order arrives cold in a coffee shop or a restaurant, I know it's been said before, it is obviously quite normal to complain to the server, right? And here, this becomes a satisfaction, which is quite valid and constructive. These kinds of complaints are more likely to lead to the resolution than the unresolved issues. So it's a good thing. Are we then looking for solutions? Question. Joe Charbonneau writes, complaining without action is like an umbrella that lets the rain in. Beautifully expressed. This truly makes sense, as it can be a catalyst for problem solving. Here is yet another example. When your internet connection, for instance, keeps dropping, what do? You may desire to complain to your service provider, correct? It is discovered that people who complain with specific suggestions for improvement are more likely to see positive changes. Brian McGill says, complaints are like the brakes on the wheel of progress. Complaining may be a stress relief mechanism, as we said before. And research shows that venting can be effective in reducing stress. Although, as mentioned before, excess of it can create the feelings of negativity. Complaints are the voices of those who cannot be heard. Think about it. Therefore, I will consider it as a positive trend at times. Although it sounds a very negative activity, like many other activities similar to it, complaining seeks empathy and understanding. It's not incorrect, is it? When one shares a concern with a friend, one is most certainly looking for support. One suggestion shows that sharing vulnerability through complaints can foster empathy. And in fact, I would say that it strengthens the social bonds. Judy Ford says, complaining is not conversation. It is a connection. It can be a way to bond with others in regard to shared grievances, and can create, indeed, a sense of belonging within social groups. However, can complaining be a part of habitual behavior? This is another question to consider. Tim Kreider says, complaints are like the car alarms of human interaction. They are, in reality, the signals for actual emergencies. Point taken. Some habitually complain and do not realize it. It may be seen as a reflection of their general mindset. It can be linked to a predisposition for negative thinking, which can be changed through cognitive behavioral interventions. It can be a sign of attention seeking also. Joel Osteen says, complaining will not change the outcome, but it will change you. Good point. One thing is certain. It can draw attention to oneself, and some others exaggerate a minor issue at a social gathering, and that can make you the center of discussion. The study shows that seeking attention through complaints may be a way to cope with feelings of inadequacy, in or low self-esteem. Could it be a sign of coping with the lack of control? Dale Carnegie says, complaining about a situation is the first step throughout improving it. When one feels powerless in certain conditions, they may indeed resort to complaining, and that is to regain a sense of control. According to study, adaptive complaining, where people focus on actionable aspects of a problem, is more likely to lead to problem resolution. Complaining is a multifaceted behavior based on considerations in psychology. It serves various purposes, essentially to strike a balance. Comprehending the reasons behind those complaints, one needs to use them as tools for constructive communication and personal growth. However, being aware of the research backs pointers to make sure those complaints have a positive impact on one's life and relationships. Can complaining be a toxic trait? Consider. It is true that it can be, but the main reason why it is so destructive is as follows. The effects of somebody complaining can be toxic for the mind. Even the most powerful minds in the world can be affected by negative behavior, and that is why many of these people cut the negative people out of their lives, and quite rightfully so. Sometimes one finds little gems. Here is one to read or recall. The act of complaining is destructive sometimes, and it can bring nothing but negativity to people committing the act and the ones who listen to it. This is most definitely not a dramatic exaggeration in the slightest, but complaining about one's problems does nothing but bring you and others down. It can also make you look weak, disturbed, and pathetic. We all have done it in the past. We can still stop, discovering that our lives can improve dramatically, and as it's written, that complaining can activate some kind of a death spiral of the depression, which can consume people and which leads to taking habit-forming drugs, alcohol addiction, and excessive cigarette smoking as a direct result of habitual complaining. Consider. Now, many people don't seem to realize when they are complaining, and herein self-awareness is a skill that needs to be practiced. At the end of the day, one needs to analyze the things one has said in one's head and see oneself from an outside perspective. Look and see if anything you said looked like complaining. And this may be quite surprising to you. The writer expresses that misery loves company. Haven't we seen and experienced it so often? The main reason why it is so destructive is that it can affect somebody badly, as complaining can be toxic for the mind. When one is in a bad mood and wanting to complain, they always try to find somebody else with multiple issues and or go as far as to create issues for someone so that they can feel better about themselves. It may sound manipulative, and many people even don't notice that they are doing it. They simply don't want to suffer alone. Keep it in mind. Many things in life, including suffering, are easier done in groups than on one's own. So, the basic advice is avoid toxic people. That's it. Unless they can be your friends, even your own family. You can try to talk to them about it, but if it goes on and constantly influences you and others very negatively, just consider. This, therefore, is not an easy decision to make, and many people fail to make it because of the connections they have built with others. However, it seems an essential step one needs to make in order to be successful, not only in finances, but particularly mental success, which relies heavily on this step also. If it is so bad, why not stop it? Removing toxic people from one's life is very difficult, because you too may be one of those, unknowingly. You can't remove yourself or commit suicide to solve the problem. But when realizing that you have a problem which needs to be corrected, and it is the very first step, many others don't ever reach that stage at which they realize their own destructive behaviors. If you have already discovered that you were complaining, by observing your own behavior, then it should not be very hard to fix this issue or the problem, as long as you are willing to put forth the effort and wanting to change. One needs to continue analyzing one's own behaviors and words. So, why are you complaining? Therefore, it is important to think before one speaks, and it is a common sense, although not used often. Think before you say something, and catch yourself before the complaining starts, depending on what kind of it is, positive or negative. Reflect on what you have said and done during the day before you sleep. If you like, you can keep a little notebook next to your bed and jot down your feelings and try to see where you went wrong. We are, of course, talking about self-reflection. It is very important and will help to prevent further mistakes in the future. That goes for every one of us as human beings. Alas, as some consider, complaining can really be very bad. Although it may seem harmless, but it does make you look weak and in fact very vulnerable. It can unfortunately change people's perception of you greatly. If you break your own frame, you may find yourself to be seen as nothing but a huge joke. This is when people may not care about your problems as much as you may think. When complaining, others may try to give you unsolicited advice to feed their own ego. You heard me correctly. Because they love to be right always, or just pity you. It may appear to you right, or as empathy, but the truth is that they probably pity you. These are not said to make us look pessimistic, but looking at things from a realistic viewpoint. People may help others to feel the sense of accomplishment. They may listen to your problems and they will probably help. If they can think, they can. But when this happens, they will look at you never the same way again. Believe it or not. They will probably consider you as a weak kind of human and will never look up to you because you have shown that you are weak. And it seems that nobody within the human race wants a weak person as an ally. If it is hard for you to keep your problems to yourself and feeling that you would suffer from depression because of it, a good advice is that you find a therapist to talk to about those problems. In fact, all you say will remain completely confidential and a therapist will help you work through all those issues you're having, provided you pay them, and you should not be worrying to see a therapist either. The next important step is not to tell anything to anybody else. There is nothing wrong in paying someone to listen to your problems. However, it is better than complaining to people you know or may not. It shows that you acknowledge the fact that you actually need to talk to someone and can do it in a healthier way. By doing this, you will not be pitied or looked down upon. And if someone has an issue with you seeing a therapist, well, then they really need to take a long, hard look at themselves, because to judge others in that way is also a sign of weakness, and there are underlying problems. At the end, I say, don't complain, but you may do so to a therapist. If there are people in your life negatively influencing you or trying to, with your complaining, like some cultist preachers do, tell them that it does not work. And don't be afraid to cut them off. Remember, big changes are not made in one night. The lesser you complain, the happier you become. That is a fact. The goal should be to get rid of the negative emotion before it manifests itself. When people don't see a person who does not complain, that person certainly appears a lot stronger, and this is the reality. By stopping to complain, one will not appear only stronger, one will also feel stronger. Any thoughts so far? Here is yet another human trend. People are often dissatisfied with what they have due to a combination of psychological factors and social pressures. It may be due to a tendency to focus only on negative experiences, the constant pursuit of new things, and pressure to meet unrealistic expectations. Additionally, a sense of helplessness, or shall we say imposter syndrome, can contribute to the dissatisfaction. Psychologically, however, speaking, negativity bias, where human beings tend to play or pay more attention to negative events and experiences, in fact making it harder to appreciate what they already have. Rumination. The tendency to dwell on negative thoughts and experiences can perpetuate dissatisfaction. Consider hedonic adaptation, as we use this terminology in psychology. People often return to a baseline level of happiness after experiencing positive events, obviously making it hard to sustain long-term satisfaction. Sense of helplessness. Another point to consider. A feeling that one is unable to control their circumstances can lead to a cycle of negativity and therefore the dissatisfaction. What about imposter syndrome we mentioned earlier? Well, feeling like a fraud or that one does not measure up can lead to low self-esteem and dissatisfaction with one's achievements. And the social factors? Comparison to others. That's a point. Social media and other forms of communication can create unrealistic expectations. And a constant comparison to others, leading to feelings of inadequacy. You find them amongst the teenage youngsters. Now focus on materialism. It's another issue in our lives. A culture that emphasizes positions and achievements can lead to a focus on external validation and a constant desire for more. Pressure to achieve. That's another point. Social pressure to achieve certain milestones, such as career success, or winning a race, or financial security, of lead to feelings of dissatisfaction if one does not meet those expectations. Unlimited desires, one's own desires, of course. Human beings are often driven by a desire for more, making it difficult to achieve contentment with what they have. And a new factor. Other considerations. Lack of gratitude. A lack of appreciation for what one has can contribute to a sense of dissatisfaction. That's it. Boredom and lack of purpose is another one. Feeling unfulfilled in one's life or job can lead to unhappiness and dissatisfaction. The human tendency to focus on the negative, the pressure to achieve, and constant pursuit of more all contribute to a sense of dissatisfaction with what one has. According to a research, narcissism cannot explain some people's lack of gratitude. Charlotte Whitvillier of Hope College, Michigan, believes that some people just lack the personality quality of gratitude. According to author's note, gratitude is an experience of abundance, with awareness that one is the recipient of a good gift from a giver. They go on to defining the experience of gratitude as a deeply emotional social process. Of course, if gratitude is a trait, it means that at the end it is likely to remain an ingrate for life. People low in gratitude should also be chronically unhappy. For this, even when grown old, they cannot see a gift for what it is. They will be unable to experience that in a reward that comes from having a sense of abundance, and therefore, no matter what other qualities they have, they can never be truly happy. In a previous research, it has been cited that people high in gratitude regard an interpersonal offense not as an insult or let down, but instead as an opportunity for growth, from which they derive resilience. Cognitive appraisal plays an important role in this process, and that is why your favors to an ungrateful person do not have the intended effects. Ingrates are programmed to view favors as never being good enough. One of the interpersonal dangers of being chronically ungrateful then is that life becomes an endless self-fulfilling prophecy of other people's failure to do right by you. From whatever point in your life that you are in, gratitude becomes a part of your fabric of personality. You will be unable to turn the corner on your jaded outlook. We might also imagine that the people who do favors for the ungrateful eventually give up trying to be nice. A vicious cycle is certainly the motion in which ingratitude becomes invisible. In our normal interpersonal rhythms, in which people are nice to people who are nice. Have you noticed? What sets this vicious cycle in motion, would you say? The Hope College researchers approach this question by investigating the conditions that might stimulate gratitude's growth. Some of the methods other investigators have tried, and they note, include setting up experimental manipulation of counting blessings, writing gratitude letters, conducting gratitude lessons in the schools, and writing gratitude diaries. As such interventions appear, the authors conclude, to improve the subjective well-being of participants as they start to experience positive social emotion that comes with feeling grateful. Could therefore a gratitude intervention strategy, that is, also increase not just gratitude but hope? Unlike gratitude, which involves the perception of our current reward, hope involves the positive anticipation of receiving a future desired outcome. Maybe chronic ingrates do not just lack the ability to see past reward for what it is, but they have also come to believe that they will not receive rewards in the future either. Via that interpersonal reinforcement cycle, they have learned, in other words, not to expect other people to be nice to them. So they give up hope. After having shown in a correlational study on undergraduates that a trait of gratitude could predict the traits of hope and happiness, as predicted, the authors went on to the experimental manipulation component of the study. In the intervention study and other samples of undergraduate participants identified and wrote about a specific outcome they were hoping to experience, but one that they could not completely control. Those in the gratitude writing group then completed a writing assignment with instructions to reflect on a time in the past when they had hoped for an outcome, and the hope was fulfilled. The prompts further instructed participants to discuss such outcomes as the life lessons they had learned, the steps they or others took to contribute to the outcome, when they had grown spiritually, and whether they had gained insight into their own character strengths through the experience. The final prompt to ask them, as they reflected on this past fulfilled hope in their life, identify antonym, what they are grateful for, and to whom they are grateful. If a trait can be manipulated through the simple intervention, as in a brief writing exercise, it begs the question of whether it might not take that much to encourage gratitude in people who are always finding reasons to find fault in their favor, producing friends. The study shows that, at least among these relatively select sample of undergraduates, gratitude is a quality that can be nurtured. Their study also suggests that the conditions are that might create the eternally satisfied. For some reason, perhaps early in life, their hopes were squashed, and they learned never to expect anything out of anybody. The cycle of negative expectations led them to be the type of people no one wants to help. Unlike people who can feel and experience gratitude, they do not see the good in what other people do. And when they feel rebuffed, they react with anger and or resentment. Fulfillment in relationships depends, at least in part, on the interpersonalities that people provide for each other. Ingrates may never change their spots, but it is possible that the right conditions might allow some of them to fade. One study found that thinking a new acquaintance makes them more likely to seek an ongoing relationship. Gratitude reduces a multitude of toxicities among emotions, from envy and resentment to frustration and regret. Writing in a gratitude journal improves sleep, according to the study. We're often told, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Good advice. And while it can be hard to avoid self-pity entirely, mentally strong people choose to exchange self-pity for gratitude. Whether you choose to write a few new sentences in a gratitude journal or simply take a moment to silently acknowledge all that you have, giving attention to things can transform your life. At one stage, I have read in the Psychology Today magazine something like this. Once that an ambiguous conclusion from science is fully grasped, and the mystery of why bad things happen to good people simply evaporates. It becomes obvious that things happen for the same reason as with anything happens, with the same laws of nature that underline all causes and effects. There is nothing special about the quotation of things that we humans judge as bad. The question why bad things happen to good people can be refrained as the patient Karin's response to the question posed to her implied, why would bad things not happen to good people? More simply and crudely, you know the word, SH happens. Adopting a circular world view entails recognizing that meaning and purpose are human attributions, and that events do not have inherent purpose, unless, of course, the event is caused by intentional human action or the purposeful behavior of some other animal. The belief that life is random is unsettling, but it can be emotionally liberating. Accepting randomness frees people from excessive self-blame, and so doing also empowers them. Just consider, the universe has no purpose, right? We are told that many times over, but we do. Once we come to terms with the universe's indifference, we realize more accurately that we have only each other to rely. There's much we can do to alleviate each other's suffering when adversity strikes. Our support and empathy towards our fellow human beings in their time of need helps them not only materially, but demonstrates to them that they matter and that what happens to them has an emotional impact on us. When we act kindly, it also gives meaning to our own life, as we can see. A therapist would normally emphasize the personal impact. There is suffering, and the patient is having on them in the therapeutic relationship that we can form. This doctor says some of my cancer patients are facing less lucky outcomes. That Karen, the patient, and psychotherapeutic work turns from reassurance or tolerating uncertainty to defining their legacy and how their life has the effect to all the other lives that have been touched. I try to express gratitude to them for sharing their life experience with me, he says, and for teaching me profound lessons about the human condition. I also assured that I will pass on the lessons I'm learning from them to other patients as well as to my students. We all know that there are unfortunately many uncaring, selfish people around us, around the world. And more disturbingly, there are too many carelessly brutal people in the world for anyone's comfort. But fortunately, most people are caring, and the overwhelming majority are capable of caring when they can be taught to relate to other people's predicament and perspective. And so the universe has no purpose. I repeat, but we do. We give value and meaning to life. People can and do care, even if the universe does not, says Ralph Lewis, medical doctor, associate professor in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Toronto. And so we come to the end of this session and the episode. Thank you for sharing it. We will meet you again by the next episode. Until then, keep smiling and be truly happy. Thank you.
Oh